So you are aware, the full Re-Leased team is going to be working from home given the current situation with coronavirus. We are lucky that we are working from a various stack of different cloud-based technologies. So we don't expect that the service or support from our team will change at all during this period. If your team as well is going to start working remotely or from home, and you do have additional questions or more help that you might require from our team, please do reach out. Okay, so today we're going to be covering service charge, and I hope some of you would have tuned into our last webinar on service charge where we had Patsy Walsh from Collier's, who's the Director of Client Accounting there, and also Caleb Dunn of Re-Leased. They were talking about how the changes in the property industry are impacting the management of commercial and mixed use assets. At the end of this webinar, we did a quick run through of the new service charge function in Re-Leased, but today I've got Jo with me who's going to take a deeper dive into this. So we'll be looking at the setup and approval today. We do expect this to take the full 30 minutes, so do write through your questions. But what we will do is collate these and send them out in the follow-up email. So I'll hand over to Jo.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining. Hopefully in just one moment you'll be able to see my screen that I'm sharing, and you can see the Re-Leased dashboard. So I'm going to take you through setup and approval of a service charge. We'll be looking at how to set it up, all the different options that you have, approving it, and then some of the reports that you can run throughout the service charge period. The reconciliation and rollover and other aspects will be dealt with in a separate webinar because it's going to take a fair bit of time to go through. So if we start off and go to our property, which is this one. Oops. Okay, and down to the service charge tabs, onto the budget tabs, and okay, so in here we now have a new area. So we've got, this is the original service charge, and the service charge budget by area is the new one. So what we can do here is filter by the old service charge or the new service charge. We can also filter by the status of it, and we can search for a particular budget in here. So I'm going to create a new budget. So I click on my new, and we can just give it a title. So I'm going to call it my 2020 main service charge. Okay. Now we put a start date and an end date, and my start date is going to be from the 1st of April to the 31st of March 21. We can add notes. So you can add as many notes as you want. At the moment, we only have the notes functionality on the service charge as a whole, but these notes are available to go on various reports when you run them. You have the option. We will be adding the functionality shortly to be able to add a note against a schedule, and also hopefully against a chart of account that's covered in the service charge, but that functionality isn't here today. We then select the VAT basis for our service charge, and it will default to the VAT basis of the property, but you can change it if you want to. So I'm going to leave this as net because my property is VAT elected. The next stage is selecting what income codes your service charge will understand. So I, for now, just want it to know about service charge with VAT. You can select more than one tenant income code. And a reason that you might want to do this is if you have any tenant recharges where, so the expense is recharged to the tenants, and that recharge needs to be included into the budget. So you could include a tenant recharge code there. If you want to do something like that, it's probably best to log a question with support to make sure you get the setup right. But just to let you know, you can choose one or more than one tenancy income codes. The same goes with client contribution codes. You can have one or more than one. So I'm just going to set one for my landlord liability, but you can split it out to additional, you know, if you wanted to have landlord void costs, landlord capping costs, anything like that, you can have separate codes. And I'm then going to select my balancing service charge code. Okay, and we'll go on to next. So what you can see is we're, 31 March 2021. Sorry, if I could type, it would all be good. You can see we're on a little wizard here. If we go, oh God, 31/3/2021. Okay. Here we are. Okay, so the next step is setting which areas you want to be included in this particular budget. And what you can see is you are shown all areas in the property. So our first floor, sorry, so we can see all of the areas here. We've also got the lift, which is a non-lettable area, and you'll see over to the right here, it defaults to including all the lettable areas, and it defaults to not including the non-lettable area, but you can change that just by ticking and unticking. So I've actually just seen a question come in asking, can we backdate a budget? And the answer is yes, you can. So if I wanted to set up the new service charge budget for my 2019 budget, I can absolutely do that. If it started, you know, from say, I don't know, 1st of June 2019, or and you can run that, and it will understand all the expenditure and all the income, as long as the expenditure and income is in the codes that we're going to select in the budget. Okay, so sorry, going back to this, I am going to leave the defaults and just have all my lettable areas including, and I'm not going to include my lift. Okay, then we come into creating the first schedule. And just to let you know, you can create as many schedules as you need. So I'm going to have schedule 1. Oh, building. You can call them any titles that you like. Just to let you know that it does order them alphabetically. Or alphanumerically, so it might be nice to, even if you have schedule 1 and then the name of it, or just S1 or that sort of thing, it just makes things neater. Otherwise, if you started with whole building and then I had another one called insurance schedule, you might want the whole prefer to see the whole building one first, but because it begins with a W, it would be at the end. Okay, so that's titling our schedule. Our allocation basis. We have a selection that we can either use tenant percentages or floor area. So if we use tenant percentages, what it's actually looking at, and I'm just going to flip over to here, to a tenant in the tenancy details. If you have a service charge percentage set in here, it will use that. I don't have any tenant percentages set up here. So, and I'm going to use floor area. The other option is to use neither and to manually type in your allocation percentages. So I could leave that as select and then just come down here and manually type in I could leave that as select and manually type in my allocations. So you have a choice. For now, I'm going to use percentage of floor area. And then it asks which floor area. Is it the floor area of the budget as a whole, or just this schedule? Now, at the moment, my budget as a whole and this schedule is exactly the same, and it will do it on all 4. But say, for example, I was doing a smaller schedule that only had, say, 2 of the areas in, I was doing it by floor area, you would then want to select the schedule areas, because then it would basically do 50% between the 2 in this case, rather than 25% between the 4. So I'm going to do that, which will make each 25%. Okay, we're going to go next. And now we're selecting which expense codes are going to be included in our budget. So I'm going to start off, and I can select as many or as few as I need. So in this particular schedule, I'm going to have cleaning, repairs and decoration, utilities. That will do. I'm just going to have 3 for this particular example. And I then come here, you can see it's defaulted in all of my percentages for all of the different areas. And I'm going to put my budget amount. So I'm going to say 2,000 for cleaning, repairs and decorations, 5,000, and utilities, 2,500. Okay, and then you can see I either have the option to save and finish or save and create another schedule. If it's only a 1 schedule service charge, I can do save and finish. I'm actually going to create another schedule, and I'm going to do schedule 2 insurance. Okay, and even though it perhaps won't make sense, I am going to say that only the ground and the first floor pay into this schedule, just to give you an idea. We're going to have percentage of floor areas, and again of the schedule, so you can see that they get 50% each because I've only got the 2 floors in. The other thing to point out, that did you notice that at schedule level we can specify the VAT basis? So this will help you if you have a mixed use property, in that you might have one schedule for your commercial tenants and a separate schedule for your residential tenants, and then that will handle the VAT, the gross or net amounts correctly when you're doing the reconciliation. So if you set it to net, obviously it's only going to take the net figures. If you set it to gross, it will take the whole gross figure. So you can do that on a schedule by schedule basis. Okay, so we're going to go next, and I'm now going to select my insurance code. I'm just going to have 1 code on that, and it's going to be 4,000. Okay, so I am just having the 2 schedules, so I'm going to do save and finish. And what you can see here, we've got the setup of our service charge. So we've got schedule 1, schedule 2 on our summary tab. So what you can see, you can collapse all and just show the headers for the schedule. So this is giving you an overall view just of the schedule. So we can see what our budget amounts are for the schedule. We can open it up to see the breakdown by chart of account. And you'll also see that you can, anywhere that's underlined, you can zoom into, so we can go into here and we can manage our expense accounts, and we can, if we needed to add another expense code in here or make an adjustment to something, we can do that. And I can save and go back to where I was. Again, if I click in here, I can go into the the areas that are in the schedule, and I can either add or take out any areas that I need to. So that's sort of how to edit it. If you don't get it right first time, it's not a problem. Okay, so if you can just to confirm collapse all, expand all, just to show either at schedule level or at chart of account level. And this column here is the budgeted amount. If we then take a look at our detailed tab. Now this is a slightly different view, and I'm going to just collapse everything first, just to make it a little easier before I explain it all. So this is showing a detail, again, at this level is for each schedule. Here's your budgeted amount, and here is the budget amount for each of the different areas. Okay, so what you can see for schedule 2, the second and third floor aren't contributing to that, whereas for budget 1, everybody is contributing. You can either use the scroll bars to move up and down, or you can just drag and drop and the whole thing scrolls, which is quite useful. You can also toggle between looking at the values, which we're looking at the moment, or the percentages. And I will show you that when we come down. If we open up schedule 2, so we can see each percentage, we can toggle between the values and the percentages, values, percentages. Okay, so we can open and close up each schedule like that. And then this top area, if I open that up, this is a fairly useful little area, because it then shows you who is occupying the area throughout the period of the budget from what the system knows today. So our budget period, as we put in, goes from the 1st of April this year to the 31st of March next year. We can see that our first floor tenant is in for the whole period, but our tenant on the ground floor is only in for 183 days because their lease is ending on the 30th of September. Now, the system at the moment doesn't know whether they're going to extend their lease, so it can assume that they're not. So as far as the system knows at the moment, their lease ends on the 30th of September and it's going to be vacant from the 1st of October because there's nobody else coming into it at the moment. And then the second and third floor at the moment are vacant and are looking to stay vacant for the whole period. Okay, and you can see that you can actually zoom into the tenants if you want to. So it's kind of the same as everywhere else. You can drill in all over the place. Okay, so let's have a look now at tenancy concessions. If you have any tenancy concessions, it will show you here. So we've got our 2 tenants, our first floor tenant and our ground floor tenant. Just to clarify, that's the tenant names that I've given them, just for your information. First floor tenant doesn't have any concessions. The ground floor tenant has a cap, which is set as £600. If I just save that, where it's getting that information from, and I've gone to my first floor tenant, is here on the tenant account, and this is our first floor tenant, which he didn't have one, but our tenancy details tab, if we look in here, the service charge concessions, and we could select a cap and what the cap is, or we could also set a collar, a fixed amount, a percentage of rent, or a rent inclusive. Any of these concessions that you set here are for the service charge as a whole. At the moment, a cap is a cap on the whole service charge. We will be looking to bring in a cap on a schedule, or a cap on an expense code, or a cap on everything apart from a particular expense code. But at the moment, the concessions are on the budget as a whole. Okay, so if we flip back into here. Also on the concessions, what you can do is, if you haven't got it set at the tenant, you can edit it in here and you can override it. Okay, so from here I could say that they've got a cap of £600 as well. Oops. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of that because I don't want them to have a cap. Just to confirm, I've cancelled out and they don't have a cap. Okay, so that's the details tab. Finally, we've got a reports tab. And if we look at here, this will show you, because our budget hasn't been approved yet, so we're just in draft, we have a small amount of reports available. These are the same reports as you can see under your reports tab. So if we went to the reports tab, you would see these reports. And if I actually open that in a new tab, these are down here. So our service charge by area, these are the reports available in the reports tab. The benefit of running them from the budget is that you don't have to put any selection criteria in. So I can just run the report. It knows what the service, what the property is, what the budget is, and it's just a single click of the button to run the report. Same as all of our other reports, you can print them to PDF, look at them on the screen and download them into CSV. Okay, and this is our service charge allocation report. Okay, we can go back to our budget. We're back to where we were here. I can also, if I look now at the service charge summary report. Okay, so this is our service charge summary. So it's just the breakdown of the whole service charge. It's split down by chart of account and our budget amounts. And what you'll see, you've got two options here. You can either show the budget notes if we'd have typed any in. And the other thing that we can do on this report is show our breakdown by cost classification. So we are starting to be able to handle the RICS cost classifications. And these can all be, I think I'll probably need to handle the setup of that in a separate session because we're going to run out of time. But just to let you know, some of the reports, you can set up your chart of accounts to belong in a cost classification, and then this report can be run by cost classification. Okay, if we go back to our budget, there's one more report, but I'm going to look at that after I've approved the budget. Okay, so we finished our little wizard. If we go back to property, just to show you, and I'm going to look at my service charge by areas, and here is my budget that I've set up. We can see it's in draft mode, and I can go in here and see exactly the same as what we were just looking at. Okay, now we've finished our wizard, we can edit the budget, which edits the things on the front screen. So if you needed to come and edit anything here, if you hadn't got it correct, you can. You can manage the budget areas, which takes you to this screen. So to be able to include or exclude additional areas, or we can create another schedule from here if we needed to. Okay, I'm not going to do any of those. I am going to assume that everything's been checked, we're happy and are ready to approve our budget. So the process for approving the budget is, if we click on approve, it's fairly similar to the service charge that you might have been used to if you were using the budgets by tenancy. But there are some differences and hopefully some improvements as well. So first of all, to say, if you were entering a backdated service charge, so one starting from June last year, for example, you would already have been charging the correct service charge amounts to your tenants that are based on the budget, but it just wouldn't have been done through here. So the reason for this is to push the service charge templates onto the tenants so that they are you're charging out the right on account charges to everybody. So if you're doing a backdated one, you wouldn't want to do that because you would have already had it set up separately. So what you can do in that case is skip and approve. Okay, and all that will do is it will mark the budget as approved and it will do nothing else. It won't update anything on any of the tenants. So it won't change the tenants' templates if you use skip and approve. And that's what you would do if you were doing a backdated service charge. Okay, so then we are not doing a backdated one. So I do want to update my my tenants' templates. We have a choice of either a single line budget allocation, a multi-line schedule, or a multi-lined expense allocation. Now, I actually think nobody will want to use the multi-lined expense allocation. So if you imagine the invoice that you are sending out to your tenant, and on this particular service charge, we've got two schedules. Do you want to invoice your tenant one line saying service charge, or do you want to invoice them two lines saying service charge schedule 1 contribution, service charge schedule 2, so that they know the schedules that they are contributing to? I think from what I have seen, most people want to go with a single line, but you have the option to do a multi-line. I've never known anybody want to invoice the tenants on a multi-lined, on an expense by expense basis. So we're going to go with a single line allocation. And then it wants to know which is our default template. Are we going to put it on the rent template or the service charge template? If we pick the rent template, it will do a separate line for the service charge and it will put it underneath the rent, but we're going to do it on a completely separate service charge template. Sorry about that. The problems of working from home. Okay, so we've picked our service charge template, and my default chart of account is going to be service charge with VAT. Now, the reason that I'm selecting that is because that's what I set when I set my budget up, that it's expecting me to charge service charge with VAT. That will provide the default for everybody below. Now, that's not to say if you have a mixed use property, you'll be charging some tenants with VAT and some without VAT. So you can just set the default for the majority, and then you can see down here, you can edit each individually that you need to change. And it knows that there's going to be 20% on VAT. This is my default description. So we've got merge fields for the area, the property name, and the from and to dates. So it's going to say service charge for ground floor, whatever property, from 1st of April to whenever, depending on if we're charging quarterly or monthly, or however often you are charging. And then it wants to know, do you want to add lines or replace lines? Now, if we replace lines, we are going to be replacing the amount that they are currently being charged. So assuming that this is not the first budget that you've set up, you will have been charging them an amount previously that was budgeted on the previous year's service charge. And I'm guessing the current one is probably a bit more, might be a bit less. And in that case, you want to replace the line. So the only time you would want to add lines is if you have, I'm thinking probably more than one service charge on a property. So if you've got maybe a service charge and you've got a second service charge or a sinking fund that you're running like a long-term service charge, you could be adding a separate line for that. But generally, I think you'll be replacing lines, and we're going to replace our line. Okay, so what I've got here, as I've selected things, it's defaulted in what it can. So I've selected my service charge template. So my first floor tenant, it's saying, doesn't have a template. So I'm going to go in and edit my line. And they only have a rent template. So maybe that particular tenant, I'm going to put it as a separate line on their rent template. Okay, and if we save, so we can see that that tenant's going on their rent template, and it's a monthly, and this tenant is every quarterly, and our next charge is going to be the 1st of July because we've already, I think I've already raised the 1st of April charge already. So if you have already raised the 1st of April at the old rate, you would need to either edit that if you haven't sent it out, or maybe charge an additional amount if you wanted to do that now. If you're happy with it being charged at the old rate, when you come to the reconciliation, it will just account for the additional that needs to be charged then. So it will handle it all at reconciliation, but it just might be that you need the additional funds prior to the end of the year. So if I am happy, and you can see I've got 2 vacant areas. Now, at the moment, our vacant areas, it knows how much they are liable for, and it's not going to charge anybody. If you wanted to charge the tenant, the landlord, you can do that, but it needs to be done outside of the approval process. And I can give you an idea of how you can do that at the moment, in a moment. So what I'm going to do, because I'm happy with what I've got there, I'm going to save all and approve. So by approving, I'm going to be updating my templates. If we just give that a moment to approve. Okay, so we can now see that we've lost a lot of the buttons up here, and that they've changed. And we're back here. If I go back to my property, I can see that it's now approved. If I go back into it, if I've approved it and I realise I need to make a change to it, I can come and modify the budget. Okay, actually, just to show you before you, when you're in an approved state, you can only view this information. If you need to edit it, you need to modify your budget, and then you can edit. So now we're in edit mode. If we needed to edit anything, if we needed to edit our concessions, change our areas, change anything within our schedule, anything down here can all be edited. And this is another time that when you do approve your budget, you would want to do skip and approve, because you were just editing an amount, but we didn't want to update the templates for the tenants. Okay, so we've approved our budget. If we go and look at our tenant here, so now I've approved my budget. On the reports tab, you'll see I've got more reports available. So the first thing that you can do is download a budget certificate. And these So if we go and look at this one, hopefully you can see that. Let me just close that down. Okay, so here's my my budget certificate. It's telling me split down by schedule, each of our chart of accounts, the budgeted amount, their percentage and their allocation. So it's given them down here a summary. So it's the total budget, their proportion of the budget, and their period, charge and the payment frequency. So our service charge expense report, and this can be quite useful, and this shows us split down by chart of account, invoice by invoice, and you can see you can zoom into each invoice, and it's telling you everything that's included, and then our schedule 1, we've got an invoice in there. So then at the bottom it's listing out any invoices that have been coded to a chart of account that aren't in this service charge. Now, this will help you pick up any miscodings of invoices. So it could be that this is a valid expense that shouldn't be included. It could just be like a client recoverable expense or something like that. If it's not, and if it is a mistake, then you can actually zoom in and you can edit the invoice if you want to. So you can see here, I've actually just used a different cleaning code. I've not used one that was in the budget. So you could edit the invoice and that will update. Here we are. That will update what the service charge understands. Okay, if we then look at our income report and see what we have got anything on here, it's kind of similar, and it just shows you income. Yeah, we haven't actually raised anything yet. It just shows you income to the chart of account specified when you set up the budget during the service charge period. Okay, so those are all of the reports that we've got available at this stage. If I just go back to property, go back into my budget. So I think that's probably where I'll stop today, and what we will do in a couple of weeks' time, we've got our reconciliation one, which will cover the rolling over and the closing and the reconciliation process. So I think that's all from me now, and I'm going to head back to Natalia, if that's okay.
Cool, thank you, Jo. As Jo just mentioned, we're going to have the reconciliation and reporting webinar that will be on the 8th of April. I'll include a link again in my follow-up email so you can register for that if you haven't already. As you know, you'll get a copy of this recording, but we'll also save it on the Knowledge Hub as well. So then you're going to have a resource of all these refresh sessions. But we'll also be coming back. I can see quite a few questions have come through, so we'll be coming back to any that were unanswered. So thanks for tuning in, but if you do have any additional questions, do reach out to either myself or support. See you guys.